John, you ready over there? Jeffrey, you ready?
Hey, so by the way, that guy, Purdy just showed me a picture of him, and all that, because I went back to the meeting and I thought he spoke at public comment, but he didn't. And anyways, yeah, he was in my place Saturday.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, he was just sitting by himself over there by the front door, making it very clear not to talk to him. Being miserable
I'm very
and
approachable
all
about
that.
it.
But he paid, so I'm lucky.
Well, so is he. I'm sure that wouldn't go well if he didn't.
But yeah, he was in, hair down, ball cap on. Just, yeah, definitely recognized him. Even on camera, that guy's cheating.
Councilmember Collings.
Here.
Councilmember Klur.
Here.
Councilmember Stackfleth. Councilmember Redmond.
Here?
Mayor Globman.
Here. Okay. We'll move on to, are there any special presentations and announcements?
So special presentations related to the Lake Street Active Transportation Plan, but that's it.
Okay. Easy enough. All right. We will then move on to public comment. So this would be any members of the public who would like 3 minutes to speak on anything not already on the agenda. I know many of you are here to speak on a specific agenda item, but for anybody who has something to say about anything else, please step up, say your name, and roughly where you live.
And for first-time commenters, I will keep track of your 3 minutes for you. When you see the light on my desk turn yellow, you have 30 seconds remaining, and when the light turns red, your time is up.
I'll be the icebreaker. Aurea, half of the Yeah movement. Just want to say we had our monthly community dinner last Saturday. It was really good. We had some, even though the weather was not very good, we still had about 12 to 15 people show up, a lot of new people, a couple other nonprofits that kind of have a shared mission with us, which is really exciting. We had some good conversations, brought some good questions to council, and also just want to share that we have secured a consultation to move forward with creating our nonprofit officially. So we'll keep you posted as that continues to develop, but probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll start getting some official paperwork in. All right.
So.
All right.
Hi, I'm Rachel Streeter. I live outside the city limits, and I just want a broad topic of making sure that decisions that are made have very clear ideas, transparent, and have integrity. Looking at the Danco site that was done with a public housing review, there's a little bit of inconsistency. They ask for that you can have 2 times the amount of income for rent, even though it's supposed to be affordable housing, which means you pay 30% of your income. So it's just not clear. It's like, what are they really going to charge? And then looking forward to other possibilities here with the Lake Street project, that it's really clear to the public what it might look like, what it might happen, how long it'll take. I think we all got a little surprised with this PPL electric thing that went in. It kind of it didn't beautify our town. I'm just going to be ugly. I really think it's ugly. It took longer. It's got a lot more lines. The poles are taller, and I don't think we knew that that was going to happen under the parameters of fire hardening for our area. I think we just really didn't know that that was going to happen. And I think it was I was at that meeting a long time ago when we got into little groups here and we decided what we wanted this town to look like in the future, and we made pictures of houses, and the planning director that was here at that time, we had pictures of it. And I said to that person, I said, well, you forgot two of the most important things. You don't have cars in the picture and you don't have power lines. It looks great when those two things aren't there, but when you add all those other elements, it's kind of a different sort of picture. And so if we could just try to do the best we could in making people know really what it might be, I think that would come really far with all the citizens here in the area and in town. And just that people know also that these people are doing the best they can. They're on their treadmill for progress, and we have our own treadmill we can be on. And you as a renter can be up front with your landlord and say, if you have a hardship paying the rent, they might listen to you if they have good feedback. And if you're a landowner or a property owner, you could feasibly put a deed restriction on your property so that it is held in whatever time frame you like for the future for maybe a person of the average mean income to purchase it or rent it. It doesn't just have to go into what market rate is so that you can fill your pockets and leave the area or sell it to somebody else who wants a second or third home. That we have the power, they're doing what they can, but you as individuals, without having to come, and I'm sorry there's so few of you here, but we really do have a lot of power just ourselves being open. And whether you're a renter or a homeowner, I just hope you can find your power. And I hope you can find your clarity. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name is Danielle Williams. I'm a co-owner of the 5th season in town. And I wanted to address the situation around the power lines and infrastructure upgrades. I realize that these are necessary and that they are beneficial in the long run, but the timing and the execution of the project was really detrimental to the downtown businesses and anybody, I'm sure, who lives in the downtown as well. The power was shut off quite a number of times during the President's Day weekend and the holiday week that followed when schools were out and lots of tourists were in town. I would argue that that weekend and week is one of the most significant in terms of winter tourism outside of Christmas and New Year's. And to be shut down without any notice so many times obviously affected my business and my employees and their wages, but I'm sure it affected many other businesses as well. And I have no idea how the chain of responsibility goes, where it starts, where it ends, who has any part in it. But I feel like the city kind of let us down, or I didn't really feel supported by the decision for that timing to be allowed, and especially the lack of communication that the power companies, we signed up for notifications, but never got any. So you drive in and you find out your store's shut down and you can't even get to the door. And you ask the flagger and they're like, oh yeah, come back at like 11. And you come back at 11 and they're still closed. And you come back at 1 and it's still closed. And you come back at 3 and maybe you can open for a few hours. And I just feel that I would hope that the city could help the businesses find a way to communicate excuse me, their grievances to the power company or the contractor that did the work, or to just help the businesses know what they can do to kind of try and recuperate some of the losses, both for the business and for the employees who lost lots of possible work. So thank you for hearing my concerns.
Hey, Danny, we've got to touch base about a different meeting. If you're around after the meeting, let's talk, because that it's Pac Power's decision, and we got notice on a couple of days, and nothing did get shut off, but we didn't hear about any of the businesses, and we had some back and forth that wasn't very productive, and I would like some more info so we can go back to the regional folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you very much. All right. Oh, okay. Any other folks? It's fine.
Namaste, yate, and aloha. I'm Afa, part of the Yeah movement. Gorgeous over there. That one's mine. So we had the community dinner on Saturday, and that was amazing. We did have a tiny house available, so we did take a little tour. So that was pretty cool. And I don't know, what was there, like a dozen people showed up, so they got to touch it, ask a bunch of questions, see it. And that one was what does he call that? A lightweight. So it was just under 200 square feet, 176 square feet. So at least our locals could see that. That one was made for travel, but if you just double it, that's almost 400 square feet. So the locals got to touch it, look at it, and then, get the dream, the manifestation down and touch it down a little bit more. So that was pretty cool. A lot of the locals gave a lot of review on that they really appreciated that. And a lot of new faces. There's probably like 10 people I didn't even know from anywhere. So that was kind of cool on a more gray, cloudy, rainier day. But people still showed up, so that was super awesome. Like we said in the past, funding for that goes towards our dinner, goes towards our little rental at that awesome rad camp, and towards the consultation, which is about $500. And we just hit that threshold with all the little dinners, and we just pushed it for March 5th or something. So we got a professional consulting for a nonprofit thing. The next phase of the Yeah movement is going to be somewhere around $2,000 or less to have a legal team put it all the paperwork together and file it for liability to push that way. And we're still hoping that that's going to be accomplished by the end of this year. So we're really, really extremely grateful for everybody that called Rhea to put up a website because they wanted to help the Yeah movement move around. Called me to do some stump grinding sessions for spring when it's nice and dry, because they want to help the mission move forward. And then somebody else came around the corner and said, whatever your rental space was, let us help you with that. And so it was like, okay, cool, thank you. And so just really cool people are coming around and really helping out the movement, and we appreciate everybody, and we appreciate all of you. We know you guys are volunteers and staff is awesome. Where's our chief? Both chiefs, because they're awesome too. So thank you. Thank you, thank you. We just appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Afa. All right.
Okay, hi, I'm
Hello.
Therese Swenson. And one of the things I want to remind everybody is we need more community involvement. Just now, this woman spoke about the work that's going to be done on Lake Street. And I think that's really important that people have an opportunity to be able to come in and talk to the city about what's going to be happening on their street. I know people that live on Lake in Washington and what's going to happen with all of that. And so one of the things I made was a request. I'm going to hand this to you, to Todd and Kim and Mayor, that board and council members have a binder at the front counter. TV that was local news. Now you can't get that anymore. It's hard to get the word out. So I found out recently that. Sorry. So I would like to suggest that Kim move back down to the first floor so that people can come in and talk. I found that this is something else I'm going to give you. I called and I talked to her and I left a message and I said, Kim, I don't understand why you're canceling so many meetings. And so I made something for each person to have about all the meetings that have been canceled by the planning division. And I'm very upset about it because she was hired in September. And this, something for everybody. I may not have enough. hold on. That one and this. Is there one more? This one for the mayor. And then for you two to share. Thank you. I'm very upset that I was told in the beginning when I talked to her, it was hard to get time to find her in the office. I was told it was because she didn't have a quorum. And I said, well, what are you doing to fill that quorum? This was back in September. And I'm really discouraged that you're still looking for someone on the planning commission. Is that correct? We need to get the word out to the community. People need to know to go to what address, not only to Zoom this, but how do we get people that have an opportunity to talk to you, because there's going to be big disruptions. People need to be able to reach you. The idea that you're upstairs over the police department makes you not available for people's questions and all the things. So that's one of the things I want to suggest is that we get more available. I've been going in trying to get agendas and minutes, and I'm having a hard time. Okay, so where do people go to be able to, give me a website if people want to find out more about what's going on in our county? Do we have an updated website?
That's the 3-minute limit. And just to give you an update on a little bit of what you said there, the agendas and minutes, you can sign up for the mailing list, and those are emailed every week, or before every meeting, rather. Thank you.
So, okay,
But that's 3 minutes for your, yeah. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on anything not currently on the agenda? Okay. We will move on to council and staff comments. Anybody over here? Please.
City manager, we don't have any control over Pacific Power's rollout of maintenance and/or power shutdowns. We can ask, we can talk, but ultimately, we don't have any control over that.
It's not our decision, though, if we know about it beforehand and, it seems to be at an improper time, we get notified about when, an outage may affect City Hall. We don't know exactly what parts of town, but, when I get details like this, I can pass it along to the regional manager, and she's usually pretty accommodating, but we're not getting those notices, and, for instance, in the snowfall last week, they wanted to get rolling in the middle of the snowstorm in outage, and it's like, no, you got to remove your all your trucks. I mean, you're subject to pulling your trucks off the street so we can clear it while we plow, and you might need to put this off, and so I need to talk to Danny and find more of the details out. And then I can call a regional manager and just say, hey, we need to have better coordination on when this kind of stuff happens, because it's impacting our business district.
One more?
Please.
City planner, it's my understanding that we've missed a few meetings because we didn't have a quorum. Is that correct?
It's a combination of a couple of different things. A couple of times, correct, we did not have a quorum. But the other thing
Which just so
Yeah.
people in the public
Correct.
understand, if there aren't enough people on the planning commission, which there were a number of vacancies, then you don't meet a quorum, then there's no purpose in having a meeting because you can't get any work done anyway because you don't have a quorum.
correct,
Just want to make sure.
correct.
Thank you.
Staff comments? And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we do still have one vacancy on the Planning Commission as well. Is that correct?
There is still one vacancy on the Planning Commission. A quick plug, the candidate for the remaining seat must be a resident of the city limits of Mount Shasta. So there are some seats that are available to people outside the city. The seat that we're looking to fill is for somebody within the city limits. Every month, that position or that vacancy is posted through the city newsletter, we're just processing applications as they come in. But as of right now, yes, we are still recruiting for one more planning commission member.
And just for everyone's knowledge, we're still looking for folks for the beautification committee and DIAC as well? Downtown, and one more, or, yeah, and one more for the downtown enhancement advisory committee as well. And those have their own stipulations, but please inquire. Any staff comments? Over here.
Yeah.
Please.
I've got my usual tome. So contacted by the Elks chapter up here. They wanted me to get out the word that they're hosting their annual Easter egg hunt at the Mount Shasta City Park on April 4th. So it's been a while since I've talked about, this is a bad segue, but talked about the Enhanced Infrastructure Finance District. And this was formed in January of 2025. And their reporting requirements for the first year, I've got everything that I need to get rolling on this. We really should have this report by June 30th. It's going to be kind of a walkthrough this year because there really isn't anything to report. We haven't accrued anything. But there's a lot of hoops we need to jump. We need to pass a resolution once again, and we need to get the PFA back together to say, hey, we bless this report, and then we send it in. But I'm working on it, and as usual, there's a lot of paperwork. But you'll hear more about it here soon. So with the landing development, the meetings with Power Group continue. It got new maps. There was recently put in a 10-inch sewer line across the western property. We've got the land use covenant that's prohibiting us from doing residential on most of the north part of that property. And some of the south end, they're looking at potentially some affordable at the northwest quarter, well, a little south of that isn't part of that covenant, and they're still at the moment looking at potentially a tiny homes cluster on the east parcel. The issue there, again, is Church Street. There's a 6-inch sewer line that's in not the greatest shape, probably need to be upgraded. And then the other piece of this is we have $200,000 and change in EPA brownfield grant money. We're finally going to kick off the RFP. But first, we got to figure out what this $200,000 and change will buy us in terms of conceptual planning and a full public outreach process, so we get this right. And so you may remember, if you've been following the landing saga, that we had a meeting initially in town with the landing team and their favorite architects and planners out of Dallas. We've got a meeting with them on Wednesday to kind of walk back from that $200,000 in terms of what's our best bang for the buck, and how we can get through at least 2 public meetings and make changes based on community comments. So we're getting buy-in on the way the types of uses, how we create a community focal point at the landing that is desirable for the entire community, and what type of uses are needed. And so that's what we're working on. After we have that meeting this Wednesday, we can rock and roll, get that RFP out. So interesting conversation. I want to be very careful about this. Loge Camps 2 weeks ago went bankrupt fully. There's just 2 properties that did not. There is a gentleman who called me that apparently I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. He's the financier out of Florida, and he was dealing with somebody local that he was going to be providing the money for to purchase the loge. He has a habit, since he's been doing hospitality his whole career, of wanting to meet who he's going to be in business with. in person. He came up here, he got a bad feeling, he's pulled the plug on the party that was planning to purchase the Loge, and he either is going to run it himself or he's going to find other party to purchase it. So that's good news. Okay, and I shared with council, we've got a really good start at how we market the 250th anniversary of this country, along with 101st for the naming of Mount Shasta, how we're going to pull events in Reading, what events we want to make sure that we hit, how do we advertise this, and how do we create uniform branding among Discover Siskiyou Economic Development, the city, the chamber, and we get pretty consistent graphics for folks to put in their windows. Talking to Brett at the chamber, we're going to reconvene on Wednesday. Her daughter's a graphic designer, and she's working on some type of branding, and then we'll move forward and start moving on this as well. And make sure I haven't missed anything. Oh, we had a meeting as well with some scientists that have been looking at the mud flow area above Upton Highlands. With Tom Hesselden, one of our angles that we're exploring, we don't know if it has legs, is that we seek funding through Sierra Nevada Conservancy this next round to do the entire Greenway project with the idea that daylighted Castle Creek could serve as overflow in case of a catastrophic mud flow and avoid damage to the city. We need to find out if this is going to work or if this is just a pipe dream, but it would check another box and make us more competitive. That's the big stuff I've got. If you have any questions, then.
Yeah, so regarding the Loge camps, that deal it was 2.7 million, that got canceled? Not according to the guy I talked to.
So the person that you spoke to.
Yeah, that's buying it, thinks he's buying it.
It was being financed by a party out of Florida.
But he had backing, is that what you're saying?
That's exactly, and this gentleman decided to part company.
With the local guy?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is the plan to continue operating as the Summit View Lodge or Summit View Inn, whichever one it is? Do you know?
I've heard two things floated. One is potentially a wedding venue, and still the potential for using it as a reconfigured use related to lodging that's ill-defined right now.
Okay.
Okay, so in bankruptcy, are TOT taxes also discharged, or?
Not yet. There was an inquiry with Melissa. It hasn't been resolved yet, but no matter what, we've got an agreement with Chicago Title, and they're on the hook. No deal can go through until we've got our first position on collecting back TOT taxes and fines. But we on another issue, the old hospital and the spontaneously combusting property, we managed to recover all of our attorney's fees, and that came through in a wire transfer, so that's all settled.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Moving on to number 6, committee updates. Do we have any updates from any of the 4 committees?
So, gosh, I can't remember if I reported on this last time. The DEAC committee met. We're meeting again this Wednesday. So we're looking at reviving the Powerbox art looking at the potential for sites for potentially painting murals that are visible and high quality as a way to kind of pull people downtown. And Danny from the fifth season, you know, we volunteered to take on, you know, planning for Biketober and seeing how we can tie this into the 250th and 101st, and seeing how we can raise some money for that and get that off the ground before, you know, we lose light.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. Moving on to number 7, the consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, February 9th, 2026, regular city council meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, January 22nd, 2026, and February 5th, 2026. Total gross payroll and taxes for the periods ending February 5th, 2026 and February 19th, 2026. C, monthly investment report. D, resolution approving CDBG application.
I'll move to approve consent agenda items A through D by title only.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstain? Okay. Moving on to number 8, the Lake Street for All plan presentation. A little background. In 2024, the city of Mount Shasta was awarded funds from Caltrans to complete the Lake Street Complete Streets Plan. The preliminary final report was presented to council by Green Dot Transportation last November. Jeff Schwein of Green Dot will now present the final report. This is a report by Ken Kellogg, Public Works. But I believe. There we go. Ken is presenting Jeff.
If I can, well, they're
Please.
getting set up. As we've talked about before, there has been a lot of work on traffic counts, crash stuff, crash reports, and we had a stakeholder group that met several times, and we had a fair bit of public outreach, and I think we've come to a pretty good set of recommendations for the next phase, which is seeking planning specifications and engineering money so we can get this built.
All right, clicker's not quite working, so maybe I'll ask someone to change the slides. Oh, there we go. Great. Great, so my name's Jeff Schwein, been in front of you before. I've talked to a lot of the community members. I'm here to present the final draft of the Lake Street for All. That means bicyclists, walkers, means people in wheelchairs with motorized scooters and these cars. Everybody needs to use Lake Street, we understand that. So the purpose of this project is to make some improvements. And like Todd said, the catalyst was that we got some state transportation to repave Lake Street. So just coming in and redoing pavement is not a great to make improvements to your city. Sure, the pavement great, we all love that. It's a good thing to do. But we also want to improve the city for economic benefit, for residents, and for visitors. So that was really the point of this. The city got some money from that grant from Caltrans to make improvements, which Lake Street is one. So that money is available, which is fabulous. And oh, I thought it sounded like it was working. Okay. So the process here was to analyze the existing conditions. You know, we're consultants. We come in from out of the area. We come in and we say, okay, this is what we see from our perspective. Boom, we see sidewalks that are heaving because of trees. We see too much space for cars, so they go too fast down the hill. We see no compliance for Americans with disabilities, for people getting up the curb ramps, things like that. We make our observations. We do some analysis. We did some surveying on this particular street to understand what right-of-way was available to use, which was very important. And then we talk to the public and we say, hey, from our perspective, from our professional opinion, this is what we see. What do you guys see? Tell us, the users of the street, every single day. Tell us what you see. Where do you see problems? And we give them sort of prompts on, because sometimes when you ask people to tell us what the problem is, they say, oh, no, it's fine. But if you start saying, well, what about this crack that's 2.5 inches tall and you have your wagon with your kids in it, you're going to farmer's market and you got to go up that. Is that a problem? Well, yeah, actually that bumps the kids. You know, the other day I lost something out of it. Just things like that to spark people's creativity and imagination on what a bad street is. So we're trying to make a good street here. Then we develop concept designs based on engineering standards, based on progressive techniques that happen in California, throughout the United States, throughout the world, and we try to come up with a solution that works for the street. So that's what we've done, and we've created a plan, and we'll get into some of it. So Lake Street, from Rockfellow down to I-5 has 3 different characteristics. They're very different. You know, the residential section up by the schools coming down the hill, the Chestnut, is a different animal than the downtown core, the 2 or 3 blocks right there before the tracks, and then we call it the commercial core, leading all the way to I-5. So we kind of started out doing concepts for each of those, but in reality, the community wanted pretty much the same concept for each one. We want to have wide enough sidewalks that we can walk and not have to be squeezed against a utility pole or something like that when we pass somebody. We want to have bicycle lanes that are protected by something so we feel safe there. It might be a parked car, like I'll show you on some of the slides and concept designs, and it might just be extra space between where the cars are going to be and a little raised bollard. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about when we hear what the community wants. Community also wants to be able to park cars on the residential area, for sure. Lots of those houses up there don't have off-street parking or driveways, so we need to accommodate that, continue the accommodation of parking cars on the street. In the community core, we still need cars to be able to access businesses down there. So we were very conscious of that as we designed these things. So there's a couple things in this report that we need to fix, and so I've talked to the mayor and Ken and Todd about it, and so one of them's on this slide. So I'm going to focus on the intersection on the left. Basically, that's the Mount Shasta Boulevard, the intersection on the left. The illustration here is showing that we want to have pedestrian facilities that can help people get across the street in a safe manner, help them feel comfortable getting across the street. Because the whole point here is to encourage activity, human activity, not car activity, so human activity. So these are the intersection treatments. The actual details are not all the way fleshed out. Because we're using planning money, we can't do the actual design. So when we put crosswalks here in this kind of brownish color, that doesn't mean we're going to go out and paint them brown. It means that when we go to final design, they're going to determine what sort of treatment it's going to be. The idea here is to not just have a classic, we call them ladder style, high visibility crosswalks with the big white lines. The idea here is to have something that's a little prettier. Maybe it's a red brick stamped concrete, or something that stands out and creates some character for the city. So when you read this report, if you look at it, don't take everything exactly. So just so you know that there is some context sensitivity that we have that will be fleshed out a little bit later in more of the design. Okay, so This is one of the drawings that needs a little tweaking. Basically, this is a cross-section. That's what we call it. So when an engineer comes in to design this, they look at the cross-section. This is called a concept design. It's a conceptual design based on the feedback, the analysis that we've done, our professional opinion. So this concept actually has 4 lanes, travel lanes. We call the travel lanes, 2 going east, 2 going west. But in reality, what the community wanted was 1 lane in each direction. They do want these protected bike lanes. You can see the bike lane is painted green. It also has a 2-foot buffer between the vehicles and the bikers. And in that buffer are bollards that can be removable. There's like a million types of bollards that you can use there. So that would be determined at the point of design. And certainly we're taking into consideration snow plows and things like that. So the city is prepared to, I think there's already some special equipment for plows for sidewalks and that width of facility coming down the line. So in the community core, still have some parking here. This is called a parking protected bikeway. So the cyclists are protected by the parked cars. We have a little bit of space there, an extra wide bike lane, so if a passenger's getting out of the car, the door zone doesn't quite just smash the biker. But this is a really successful method for helping cyclists feel comfortable, still accommodating parking, and slowing the cars that are in the travel lane down. Because if you're that close to a car, these are 11-foot lanes, 11-foot travel lanes, you're gonna feel constrained, you're gonna drive a little slower. That's important. And then up through the residential area, we have the same thing. It's a parking protected bikeway, and that continues all the way up to Rockfellow. So this is total travel lane width is 11 plus 11, 22 plus a foot for the stripe in the middle. That is more than half of what's there now. Right now you have 14-foot lanes in some areas that just create that speed coming from the east down the hill. That will go away, really. This will make people feel constrained. You'll still have the traffic and throughput. That'll be just fine, but it will help people slow down to help the vulnerable users be a little safer. So moving on to funding and financing, there are a lot of funding opportunities out there for these types of facilities. We can't go out and just say, we need all the money for the roads right now. They say, well, we don't have enough. There's just not enough gas tax being collected at the state and federal level to fund all the needs of the community. However, there is some funding out there to improve alternative modes to transportation. The gross polluters from the state contribute to a fund called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Some of those funds filter down into the programs that fund bicycle and pedestrian facilities to improve greenhouse gas emissions reductions into the atmosphere. So some of those funds are available. Some of these funds come from the federal highway bill. They filter through the state. And then there's programs like the one that the city is planning on pursuing called the Active Transportation Program. They're pretty well funded. I think this project, with all the planning that's been done, with the leveraging the state transportation improvement funds for the pavement, I think this project has a real competitive shot at getting funding. Total funds, it's about $2 million to do these improvements, and that's on top of the $2 million that is available for the pavement projects. So the next steps for this are to apply for the funds through the Active Transportation Program. Those applications there'll be a call for projects either late this month or in March. Those applications are due on June 15th. Integrating the STIP paving project and these bicycle and pedestrian improvements needs to happen. Can be a little bit tricky, but I'm sure that can happen. And then continue to advocate for the project. You know, everyone here who supports the project can continue to, continue to advocate for developing this project. So that's my presentation. Yes, sir?
Can I add just two things to this? One thing that I think is important that maybe we moved over quickly is part of this is clarifying that Pine Street and Lake Street intersection. And it's conceptual, but bringing that out so the sight lines are better and it better fits the street. And Jeff touched on it briefly, but the way the bike lanes and the travel lanes would work as you're heading towards the railroad tracks, it would neck down to one lane because we've got excess amounts of capacity there. And Jeff was right in terms of and we've been talking about this as a group for a while now, is if you're seeking transportation money, the money that you are going to have the best luck procuring in the form of grants is definitely related to active transportation. So, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. That was excellent. Questions from the council over here? Looks like we got one on the end there. Please. Go first, Jeff. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you.
Welcome.
Real helpful. Going from 14 or 15 foot wide lanes, especially in the residential area, going down to 11 feet clearly will slow things down, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Would you talk briefly about the width of fire and ambulance equipment, and how wide they are relative to an 11-foot wide lane, and how those really wide vehicles will fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the standard lane, like you see on Interstate 5, is 12 feet wide. 11 feet wide is a little bit smaller. Typically, those are for sort of parkway or residential community core streets. Lanes can go down to 10 feet. It's in the California design manual that you can bring them down to 10 feet as long as you have turning radiuses at specific intersections. And so a fire truck is about 8.5 feet wide. It can certainly pass by unless you got a muscle truck with big mirrors on the side that's sticking out into the travel lane. But it's really the turning movements that are a challenge for emergency access crews. When I talk to emergency access crews, and this particularly comes up when we're talking about roundabouts or traffic circles, they pride themselves in being able to get through anything. They really, it's more of, it's kind of a perceived challenge. We could not design a facility that doesn't allow an emergency vehicle through. It's illegal. We just can't do it. So rest assured that all the vehicles will be able to travel through these lanes with no problem.
And not to be nerd fest guy over here, but it's really common with 11-foot lanes. That's modeled in a program called Synchro, and they've got a model of a fire truck, and it's able to navigate with the 3-point turn just like any other street. When you get down to 10 feet, it's a little tougher. You get below that, then you've got delays. But 11 feet is very, very common.
John?
Yeah, through the chair. So can you clarify the cost of, well, it's clear here that the cost of construction is approaching $2 million, 1.5 to $2 million, okay. But you mentioned a couple times that there's final planning, and that usually costs money. Is that something we have money for? Because you did mention something about $2 million. Is there any money left over from the grant Can you explain all this to us?
Well, we would write in a little bit more for that, probably about 30 to 40% more into the grant application for the final design.
Okay, so the money that we were granted was spent on this plan, right?
The planning money, yep.
Yeah, all right. So the detailed planning will add enough that we get towards $2 million and we have to apply for grants. That would include that, correct?
It would all be in the same grant application.
Okay.
The active transportation program allows
I'm
for-
trying to determine if there's a step that we're missing here. So we approve this plan, then we write up grants that will include further planning, final planning, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And so there's there's 2 steps left, to get the grant money and then plan and do the construction.
I think what we're trying to avoid here is a lot of jazz hands, and we get to a point where we've got something planned, and then we go forward, reconstruct Lake Street, and we've got nothing to show for it, or we've got to wait and then have to rip up some of what was already, part of the reconstruction. So, this is the intent, is to write it into the grant.
So one point on that, and I mentioned integrating the pavement project and the bicycle and pedestrian improvement components of this project. The pavement project has a different project extent. It ends at Mount Shasta Boulevard, goes to Rockfellow. They have a little bit different timelines. Once we get the construction money for the bicycle and pedestrian, that's, to get an agreement in place is 3 to 4 years out. So the pavement project needs to be spent prior to that. So when I mentioned integration, the engineer that's working on the pavement design right now is considering how to integrate these 2 projects. They'll take our concept designs and say, we're going to create a place for the pavement. We're going to come in and reconstruct this and pave it, but we don't want to touch it later. We don't want to rip out anything that we've done. So that integration is forthcoming, and you'll see it when things start going to construction. So just be aware that there's going to be sort of 2 construction projects in the future, and we need to have those integrated. So it's a little tricky, but it's been done before.
And is the idea that in the interim between those 2 projects that things will, like as that first paving portion of it becomes finished, it'll still be functional?
Oh, yeah.
Everything, okay. Yep. It's not gonna shut down a large portion of travel for any extent, okay.
No,
And then I believe on a prior iteration of this, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a timeline. There was a table given with a timeline. I didn't see it. I don't see it in this one. Do you have a rough idea? I want to say the end date was sometime in like the end of 2027. Was that accurate?
Yeah, 2027, kind of, the end of the construction year is the hope for the timeline.
Cool.
And as the design gets further along, that timeline gets more accurate. So we'll keep continuing to report back on if the timeline's changed.
Awesome. Any other questions from council? John? No?
One other clarification. So in the report that's posted online right now, in some of these presentation slides, there was just a couple tweaks to those concept designs. So if there is a movement to adopt this plan tonight, we want to hold space to make the changes that have been already discussed prior to this meeting.
Should we detail those?
If we approve, we approve with amendments.
Okay. All right. Any other questions here? Okay, we will now, thank you very much for your presentation, Jeff. That was excellent. Loving the bike lanes going everywhere. I'm now going to open it up for public comment, if you would like. Well, yeah, so please come up to the microphone and speak. But there's folks at home as well.
So is there still going to be a left turn lane with the police department here and CVS here, are we going to lose that left turn lane? Because when I looked at that, no, it'll still be there.
It'll still be there. Yep, gotta be able to turn left.
Thank you. I just didn't want everybody back up for something.
Cool. Any other public comment on this, please?
I think I've heard that there's a need for upgrade of sewer in this town. Is there a sewer line under that street? Does it need to be taken care of in conjunction with this project, so it doesn't have to be torn up in the near future? Has that been thought of?
Ken,
Is there a sewer line under there?
please.
Yes.
Can we elaborate?
And does it need to be fixed?
No, actually, that sewer line's in great shape. It's fairly newly installed.
Cool.
But it is being, it's being taken into account with the design.
With these costs? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I just know that Talent in Phoenix, Oregon had put in something like this. I think the bike lane was in a different place, but the citizens so disliked it that they've torn it up at a cost to their own town of between $1 and $2 million. And I'm not sure if the layout is the same. And I'm not sure exactly why they hated it. The people driving said it was too hard to navigate the cars. That's the only thing I heard. I don't know anything else, but they're taking it out. And it's only been in a couple of years, all right?
This is the bike lane you're talking about.
I think they're getting rid of it, and I don't know if it was placed to the right or to the left of parked cars. And also, if a car is parking, we all get used to kind of using the curb to guide us. Is there gonna be an instance where those who are parking challenged kind of nudge into the bike lane and possibly create an accident? I don't know. I mean, I'm overthinking, but I just don't know. I mean, you've all seen parking challenged people, okay?
So,
All the time.
on that note, part of the design, particularly in the residential, does call for a slightly, I believe it's referred to as a Dutch-style elevated bike lane.
I saw the lump on is a hump. Something.
Yeah, so the bike lane, particularly in the residential area, is slightly elevated above the vehicle parking. And my thought is if a vehicle is routinely going up and over curbs and driving into areas they shouldn't be parking, that might need to be reevaluated on the part of the driver.
Okay, and the plan for snow storage in winters, normal winters, with respect to this drawing? I mean, the snow would be pushed onto the bike lanes, and then there'd still be the parking? Or would the snow be removed like it is now, totally?
Pretty much like it is now. We actually took out some road furniture, like planters and whatnot, because it was going to make snow removal rather difficult, and we've gone to a much more simplified approach that it is plowable. And this is for further discussion. Right now, it will be plowed to the side of the road, meaning the bike lane and the sidewalk. Now, where we have the Dutch style elevated, that means it will be plowed into the bike lane. Where we don't have that situation, it can be taken all the way back to the sidewalk.
And is the material used in building this new road, is it durable enough to take the plow's blade and weight, or are we just going to have chunks?
No, it would be standard asphalt and standard subgrade with, aggregate base, standard Caltrans approved pavement.
And so you have a history that this stands up to a plow?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment or questions for Jeff while we've got him here? Not to put you on the spot too much more there, Jeff, but sure, if you don't mind, stepping up to the mic. There's people at home watching. It's not just for us.
So the road from Mount Shasta Boulevard up Lake Street doesn't have sidewalk right now. So are you going to be purchasing land, or when people have do they have an easement for sidewalk anyway? Or is that going to be, I heard something about this before, about talking to the people on Lake Street.
Nope, so my understanding is that it doesn't impede on the private property, the homeowners there. It's just a narrowing of the traffic lanes in order to accommodate the bike lanes.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, any other public comment on this matter? All right, we will bring it back for council discussion then. Anything from this side of the table? How about over here? Okay, then. All right. In that case, how are folks feeling about it? Is this, we're...
Well.
Jeffrey?
Mr. Redmond? Okay. All right, so I'll move to accept the Lake Street for All plan as presented by Jeff Schwing.
Okay.
With amendments.
With the amendments he mentioned? With amendments mentioned during the presentation.
Second again.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstain? Okay. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Excellent work. All right. Moving on to number 9, the mobile home park rent control report and council direction. What's that? Oh. Background here, on November 24th, 2025, the council reviewed rent increase related documents submitted by residents of the Shasta Horizon Mobile Home and RV Park. Since then, staff has further researched the issue, and we're going to have our planning director, Kim Fowler, give us a little more information here.
Thank you very much. So in summary, this agenda item went to City Council for discussion back in November. At the time, the concern revolved around rent increases and by how much and was that allowable or permissible. At the time, a very high-level investigation occurred and staff talked with the community property manager. It was determined at the time that since rent increases were not outside the boundaries of what was allowed, that there wasn't a need to look further into a rent stabilization ordinance at the time. However, since then, staff has been in discussion with several residents of the Mount Shasta Horizons RV Park, mobile home park and RV community. There's a little bit more to the story, and so that needs to be discussed tonight. I'll let the residents come up and speak about what their specific concerns are. But in summary, it's more than just the increases in rent. It's teasing out the utilities and what that means in terms of how much water costs every month, how much the sewer costs, when those rates go up, how can they go up? There's also what happens when you get a notice, your cable all of a sudden is no longer being offered as an amenity. Things of that nature. It's just unclear when these increases happen, how much of these increases can happen. So the community is just looking at staff to help provide them with guardrails, and those guardrails can come in the form of a rent stabilization ordinance that can help establish base rents, rental increases, what happens when somebody moves out, somebody else moves in, what happens to the rent of the land underneath the mobile home, and some other things. But the community is looking at the city and asking for help in terms of how to set some of these guardrails in place. So one of the things we can do is to look into a rent stabilization ordinance. I believe there are 95 cities and 11 counties in the state that have already done that, so that's one way we can look into that. Another thing we can do is to look into oversight of a rental agreement between the park providers and the individual residents. That's another option. And if there are any other discussion items or ideas that come up tonight, we'd be happy to hear about it. But staff at this point is looking for the city council members to listen to the community and listen to their concerns.
Sorry to interject on everything. So it's more than just the rent increase. It is the consistent increase in trash fees, water, all the utilities. We held a meeting a couple weeks ago, and with the mayor and myself and Kim and more than 10 of the residents, and we have 2 letters that were entered into the record from residents that didn't want their names read. And we heard firsthand from these folks. We also understand that it is a business, and we don't want to be unduly restrictive, but if we're taking up the mantle of providing affordable options in the city, the last thing we want to do is displace our more vulnerable members of the community. So,
Awesome. So at this point, we'll take council questions. Do we have any over here? John, down there. Zach?
Well, I guess we'll find out, but are the mobile home residents, tenants, are they being charged utilities like everyone else in the city on an individual basis, so that there's a unit charge, and they're being charged the minimums or not?
yeah, so I'll let.
So it's approximately $24 for trash, and it's $75 for sewage.
So we should probably let the residents speak. It's a consistent annual significant increase.
Yeah, but that's something we did to everyone through our rate studies.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they cost up here.
So are they doing a markup?
Since I don't know.
Just so that everybody knows, I'm a resident over here on Alder Street, and my rates for water and garbage are the minimums. And so that's the numbers I just threw out there. Water fluctuates a little bit with usage, but I don't irrigate, so it's usually very low. And then there's that $1 thing for drainage. So, yeah, I'm interested to see if people are paying more than that base amount. So, yeah.
Question? Jeffrey?
I'm inclined to kind of continue on with Councilmember Stackfleth's questioning line, which is, we've got a letter here from somebody. There's not a single number in the letter. We have no idea what utilities relative to cable, relative to power, water, any other charges that are under other categories, what have they gone up or not gone up, or are they getting marked up or not? I'm just speaking for myself, I'm a little frustrated trying to have some more tangible, and by that I mean numerical analysis that says, hey, here's what the state of California's statewide caps are on categories of increase at trailer parks. Here's what's happening there. Well, all we know is they haven't exceeded those caps that the state has put out. But we don't know, other than that, where they are.
So,
we get letters that people are upset saying that the increases have been too much. I don't know how to respond with too much. I'm interested. I want to have better evaluative criteria, I think, just to try and understand.
So just to clarify here, AB 1482 that caps rental increases in the state of California does not actually apply to mobile home parks, we found out, because it only applies to developed structures, whereas in a mobile home park, the traditional agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but the traditional agreement is for renting the land under the mobile home park itself. And so there actually is no rent cap, which is part of what the new owners are taking advantage of as well.
Are they going above the other rent cap though?
There isn't one.
Again, this kind of heads towards my point of more information like that, Mayor. Thank you.
And then with respect to utilities, whether they're the city utilities or other utilities like power, cable, phones, what else? Are the units individually metered or not? And
Or some HOA kind of charge.
Yeah, and they're
for-
dividing it, and then
So
they're.
I think
yeah,
at this
so-
point, it might make sense to allow folks to speak for themselves and to answer the people that can answer these
Actually,
questions.
can I just?
Sure, go ahead.
So when we met with residents and prior to meeting with residents, we have oodles and oodles of records from renters at the mobile home park that go back years prior to the company taking over and what the increases were in all the utilities and in rent. And there's just been a significantly marked increase. We haven't assembled that because we're looking for direction from council whether we even want to go down that road and do a set of findings and pull all the data together and say, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. But it's going to take a fair bit of work. So we wanted to, before we dig into this fully, get direction. Are we digging a dry hole?
To the chair.
Please.
One question I have before we hear from the community is, if that California sanction that you referenced, if that did apply to mobile home parks, if we just assume, just for the sake of this question, that it did, has the increases gone above those limits? I think that's important to.
You know, when I presented last time, there were a set of increases on the books of what you could not exceed, and our findings originally were that the park was not, it was up. I wish I had the staff report here, but it's right up to the line, but it's not exceeding.
The difference to me, and maybe this is getting too much into the discussion section, so I can hold off until we reach that portion of it rather than asking a question, but the difference is that in a traditional rental situation that AB 1482 governs, if somebody's raising your rent 10% every single year, you're very likely to move out and attempt to find somewhere more affordable. But when you own the home on that site, mobile homes, despite their name, are anything but. There is nowhere else to put it. And so you have essentially a captive audience that doesn't have any recourse and does not really truly have the ability to move. And so the fact that even if they are staying within that 10% limit, it still is not giving people a true option in terms of their housing. So that's why, as Kim mentioned, over 100 cities and municipalities and counties have taken it upon themselves to pass something when the state of California has not. So, any other questions before we open it up to public comment? One.
We'll get, yeah.
Public comment, yeah. Well, in just a moment, yeah, absolutely, would love to hear that.
I've never had a meter.
Oh, okay.
You gotta come up to the mic, it's public comment. Come up to the mic.
If you don't mind speaking into the microphone, just so the folks at home, we've got people watching at home. We'll open it to public comment.
Well, I've been here for 22 years, and I've never had a meter on there. I travel a lot in my job, so, it comes and goes. I don't mind if it was a base rate, my water, especially in the months that I'm gone, up. How's that work when there's no meter? I mean, if it was a base rate, that would be different, but it's not. So,
I don't have a good answer for you.
Some for thought.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that. So at this point, I think it seems appropriate to open it up to public comment. So if you don't mind coming up to the microphone, just state your name and where you live. That'd be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing this again. My name is Becky Fairless. I've lived in my home at the Chateau Shasta since 2015. And when I bought my home, the rent was $295 a month. And that included water, sewer, and trash removal. I've always paid my electric bill through Pacific Power, cable, all that stuff is on me. As a homeowner, I own the trailer. I also pay homeowners insurance and taxes. 3 years ago, when Boa Vita Corporation purchased the park, my rent increased, and it is now at $465 a month, and no longer includes those utilities. I pay water, sewer, and trash separately. We don't pay the same amount that they do in the city of Mount Shasta because the trailer park is on a well, and we are charged for water on a per capita basis. And I'm not sure how the sewer works, but we don't pay it through the city. We pay it to the park. So I don't know if it's a septic system or if it's city sewer. I'm not sure about that. Our trash fee per unit is $32 a month, $32.23, which I think is higher than the base for the city of Mount Shasta. As has been mentioned, all of this stuff has already been mentioned. We're in a vulnerable position because we own our homes, but we don't own the land. And moving a mobile home is expensive and sometimes impossible depending on the age of the home. Sometimes you can't move them, and where would we go anyway? And my rent increases are always larger than my Social Security cost of living increase. It doesn't exceed what would be allowed if I were renting an apartment or a house, but if I were renting an apartment or a house, somebody else would be taking care of repairs, replacing the refrigerator when it dies, things like that. I have to take care of all that stuff myself. So we're asking you to consider rent stabilization because many of the people who live in this park are seniors or on fixed income. And if the company charges too much for rent, or the company is capable of charging more for rent to new residents, so if we try to sell our homes, that makes it more difficult to sell them if the rent is too high. It's off-putting for people to buy.
That's time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Alan Roth, and I got some numbers here that might help you people. In the last 2 years, our rent has gone up $104.28. That's in 2 years per month. In 4 years, it's gone up $164.28. And when you add the utilities that they separated in the last 3 years, it's costing us $185.75 per month more than it did 4 years ago. And the people who used to make the laws on rent is HCD, Housing, Community, and Development, but they don't do that anymore. I emailed them last week, and they said, get a hold of you guys or the county, because they used to be in the MRL, which is the Mobile Home Residency Laws. I managed parks before, so it used to be in there. And it was either cost of living or something like 2.5%, whichever was less, is what we used to raise the rent. So, I mean, those are the numbers right there. So, you know, and then you add that to the cost of living in the country, plus the raising the rent, and it's just getting harder and harder to live in that park, you know. So anyway, so if you got any questions, you know, I hope that helps, because we need some help, because we can't go anywhere else.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Alan. Other folks? Anybody else? It's okay. I understand. As Todd mentioned, we did have 2 other letters in support of a Rent Stabilization Act as well, that folks who were worried about retaliation from the management company didn't want to make their names public. But at this point, if there is no more public comment, we will bring it back to council for discussion. Jeffrey, you look like you have something to say.
Yes, I do. City manager and planning director, I'd like to thank the folks that came up and presented some numbers that help us put a frame of reference on increases. Because just speaking for myself, that's what's been missing a lot. And I'd be grateful if included in the next steps in this, from my perspective and where I'm coming from, would be, hey, can you come back with go talk to these folks, get it down in writing, here's this, here's that, does include this, does include that, here's the percentage increases that have gone on, and because that, I mean, maybe I missed it, but I haven't heard that before. And the fact that this doesn't apply, that the rent stabilization controls doesn't apply to mobile home parks, and if you can get us better information, that would be real helpful relative to whether or not we should move forward on any kind of citywide policy. That's, I mean, does anybody feel this way, or am I just out here in left field missing things?
Question.
Go ahead.
Stupid question. Is this within city limits in Mount Shasta, Chateau Shasta?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything over here? John?
Sure. Yeah,
Please.
I'm all for, excuse me, lost my voice cheering for America in the gold medal game.
Fair enough.
Anyways, I'm all for doing the rent stabilization. We've harped many times, preached many times, doing the tiny home ordinance. Everything we're doing is for affordable housing and making sure it's capped and protected and all that. So I've got no problem keeping this going forward.
John?
Yeah, I think that this should be investigated more with respect to what that individual trailer home park is doing with pricing. So come back with information, and possibly this would be a new ordinance, right? And how many trailer home parks do we have in Mount Shasta?
Just one.
It's one within city limits.
One within city limits. We have the rent increases since Bovita came into effect. We've got we need to compile it, but we have it all.
And for my part, one thing, and we've
Please
yeah,
go
ahead.
so you think that the price increases have been within the 10% limit that the state sets? The rent increases?
I don't want to speak for Kim, but when she looked at it originally, it was underneath that, but it was, it's a significant increase on a regular and steady basis, including utilities and.
Well, the breakout of the utilities and then the increase to 10%, it actually feels like more than 10% because now they're paying their utilities separately. So sounds to me like some regulation of this industry might be appropriate.
I think the other important thing to remember is that 10%, I think the reason that 1482 doesn't apply here and the reason that California chose not to apply it is because folks who, as Becky said, folks who own their own mobile home are on the hook for all of the repairs. They pay homeowners insurance, these things that a normal renter doesn't. So when a normal renter gets hit with a 10% increase in their rent, it sucks, but it's not nearly the same level of hardship as it is for folks in this situation. I think it's a very unique situation, and that's why I think it really behooves us to explore this and do something and actually set it. If it's, just preliminary finding, I think it's worth setting it. And you look at, I know I saw you looking at that thing there. Most of them are set well below the 10% limit that traditional renting situations are.
You got to talk in the microphone.
Yeah, thank you, sorry. We got some folks up here who have been to a lot of loud concerts.
It used to be that we knew when the rent increase was coming and expected, because it was always after the 1st of January. Now it's just whenever. So.
Thank you. That's definitely, and that definitely is a consideration as well.
Take that.
Jessica, it looked like you had something.
I was just gonna kind of gauge what the council is thinking. If you're wanting under 10%, I think that would behoove the staff to look into this further, but if we're just wanting that 10% cap, then it sounds like they're already there and there's not much. I want to make sure that what we're regulating, once we start the regulation of businesses in town, it sets a different trajectory, so just wanting to make sure that it's worth our while.
John?
Well, we regulate several things regarding business. We make a fuss about how buildings look. And so there's regulations there when building new buildings and rebuilding buildings, so there's regulations. That's the mountain, the alpine, architecture look, that's enforced. There's all the signage rules. It is in some cases. And then there's the signage, which I know is not enforced that well. So regulating businesses is something that Mount Shasta does do. So that's not unique. This would not be unique regulatory. Well, that's what I was going to get to. So if we're going to develop an ordinance, it has to be generalized. And so what I'm wondering is, do we have to go beyond just trailer parks, since there's only one trailer park here, and it has to be a general rent stabilization program for all rentals? That's what I'm more interested in.
So there are, for rentals, specific rentals, there are regs for 1482. What it says here is if you own the home but rent the space, the lot in this case, AB 1482 does not apply. The rent you pay for the, quote, dirt is not capped by state law. There's alternative provisions, AB 978. This bill closed a loophole for a very specific group. It applies rent caps to mobile home parks located in 2 or more cities. For example, a park that straddles a city border. In these cases, rent increases are limited to 3% plus CPI, capped at 5% total. Local ordinance, many cities and counties throughout California have their own mobile home rent stabilization ordinances. These are often much stricter, and then they kind of break it down by whether if you're renting the mobile home and the dirt underneath, or so there are no clear regulations except under very certain circumstances.
So for my part, I would love to see something similar to the one you read, that for ones that straddle multiple jurisdictions, that's CPI plus 3% and capped at 5%. I think something like that, at least as far as I'm concerned, is what we should be shooting for. Please.
If the numbers that were presented here about the increases over the last 4 years, I'm actually pretty good at math. That's way more than 5% a year. I'm quite sure. So again, the planning director, if you would, you all are asking for input, which direction to head. Well, I'm just speaking for myself here, not the rest of the council, but I'd go, hey, are all the laws for the current regulations that are on the state books being met? Because apparently, while you brought up the one that doesn't apply, Todd just brought up the one apparently that does apply.
No, we were talking about the same one. So the one he's talking about is for parks that straddle 2 jurisdictions. That one specifically does have a regulation, which was the one that I just referenced. There isn't a specific regulation for ones that are within 1 city.
Oh,
yeah, it's a weird loophole.
It's just okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying I was suggesting that as a model for what we could put forth, just to match up with that.
Thank
There's
you.
one
I-
more piece, if I can add to this, utilities, and this may help with your next question. 1482 does not directly regulate utility rates. Instead, Civil Code 798 dictates how utilities are handled. Park owners can only charge you for what you actually use if metered. They cannot charge more for electricity or gas than the local utility company would charge. And utility fees must be listed separately from the rent on your billing statement. And I don't know if they're consistent there or not, but it's something to look at.
To the chair.
Please.
And other members, please chime in here, help me out, because I'm still kind of back at this, not fully understanding the landscape of what has already happened that has us here and has people coming to us going, this isn't right. And it appears that by some perspectives that these increases and then deletions of things that used to be covered in addition to the increases are unreasonable. It appears that way. But I sure would like the planning director to tell us that, to come back to us and go, here's what actually occurred, and here's guidelines, 3 to 5% cap, including CPI, or 5% max. Come back to us with those numbers that were presented and lay that case out for us that says, yeah, we should, because I'm a little hesitant to start regulating. We do regulate some things, but when we are faced with further regulations, I tend to want to go slowly and make sure this is something that we really want to regulate versus leaving the open market, even though I understand there are constraints relative to changing your domicile in this situation. It makes it more difficult, and I get that. I just want to move kind of cautiously. That's all.
To the chair.
Please.
I think we have been moving cautiously. We haven't talked about this since November 24th, and I imagine this is going to take a month or two to compile, get ready. Maybe April, we're actually talking about this again at the earliest. So it's moving pretty slow and cautiously.
And
yeah, if that's what's going to happen, that's great.
That's what we're here to decide, is like, let's get it moving then.
Do you support that?
I do, to make it clear, I support that we keep moving.
So is that enough debate? Yeah.
Saying the same thing.
Yeah, as long as we're moving to
We got
move.
Jeff's perspective, we got John's perspective. I'll make clear mine through the motion.
Didn't we table this in November or, yeah?
We had incorrect information in November.
Yeah, but to Redmond's point, I think it's just been stalled until this new information came out. So, yeah, I agree. I would like to be a little cautious about the numbers and.
All right, so I'm going to, done enough? Okay, so I'm going to move to give direction to staff to formulate an ordinance to govern, regulate trailer parks within the city of Mount Shasta city limits.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any oppose or abstain? Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item, and thank you for everyone who came forward to speak on behalf of that as well. Moving on to item number 10, the quarterly budget update. The background here, staff has prepared a quarterly budget report. So that is going to be our finance director, Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pass out some documents real quick.
Please.
Oh, actually, no, it's surprising. That's good.
Thank you. My computer died. Some of it's
one? Yes, thank you.
We're back to 21% reserve.
24. So now we're down to 1%. So 1% and then a quarter for the levy.
Are we starting?
Are you ready? Okay, so I added some additional documentation here as I did my analysis. This is our second review of the budget that we adjusted in July from the adopted, the 2 years prior. So I've been trying to keep consistent with the methodology that I've been using, just trying to expand. It's still a little bit of a learning for me how to present these things to you all, because I know it's a bit different than what you're used to. At the top of the page 109, I have listed the general revenue, the major general revenue sources. And my projection for February isn't much different than it was for October. A few fluctuations, but basically the same. And so Jeffrey wanted me to explain that the way that I've set up this report is revenues are a negative number, and so that's why they have the parentheses around them. And then what's that? Credits and debits, yeah. And so for our revenue, I show them as a negative number, which is a credit for us. And then when there's a difference, so for instance, on sales tax, because I increased the revenue, it shows as more of a negative because we're getting more money, if that makes sense. So then I tried to keep again to the consistency of here, how much general fund we have left over after we spend items. In the prior budgets, there was a line item called administrative allocations, and I want to wait to talk about that till the end. I have more detail there for you all about why that has changed so much. And then we've talked about our long-term expenses. I didn't change much there, other than I had a discussion with the auditor about how I had allocated the PERS unfunded liability, and he preferred that I do it more consistent with our current spending on PERS liability in current years. So I did adjust that, and that gave a little bit more of a credit to the general fund. So that was a positive. Then again, we have the elected officials department. Going from there, I'm just continue to show how much general fund we have available as we spend these expenses down. Then we have our funds that we provide to the community supports, I'm calling it. These are grants and things that you guys have provided to the community, as well as the work that's done on several of the events in the community, like putting up the lights and things like that, the tree, getting ready for Winter Magic. Okay, so then we move to page 110. I listed out here the building inspector. As you know, we've transitioned to a 0.6 FTE. I've left that up here for this year just to monitor the spending there. Next year, when I do the budget, I will include that as operating expense for the city, but right now I sort of have it in the contract area. Again, nothing much has changed there. Then we get to the city operating expenses. I do want to point out there that the $38,000 increase isn't actually an increase. I have moved the expenses that were put in the finance department budget for postage and shared copiers and things like that that are allocated to other programs. They're not an actual finance expense, if you will. So that's, I've broken that out of finance and listed that there. And then I will talk more about our SCORE insurance expenses later on, but they have significantly increased, although they've decreased in this budget, and I'll talk about why that is. It's a savings to the general fund, which is great. Then we have our software expenses, nothing has really changed there. And then I get to the city admin and finance, central services. I did want to point out that, we've had some turnover in the finance department. One thing that we did early on in the budget was we split half of an FTE out to the enterprise fund directly, as well as to the building and planning program. That the office assistant, or the administrative assistants in there support those two programs most of the day, every day. And then we also had a person leave and we didn't fill that position. So we have reduced our FTE in the finance department. And then if we get to page 111, these are our city services that are general fund supported. Law enforcement, the budget has increased a bit. That is really due to the unanticipated premium payrolls and shift differential pays that came out of negotiations. I've broken those out so I can monitor those more carefully. So that's the increase there. That'll obviously flow into the next budget years because the contracts go to either 2028 or 2029. Same thing with dispatch. That is also their premium pays and their shift differential pay that at the time of doing the budget, I didn't have that information updated yet. Fire department is pretty much even. Planning department is up slightly. Mostly there, it's the one-time revenue that was projected that was for a grant that we aren't doing. And then in public works, the difference that I made here was obviously we haven't had much snow. So I reduced the expense for snow removal by about $50,000. I think it may end up probably being more than that unless we end up with some more snow. And so what's happened is because the staff hasn't been working on that program, they've been working in other areas, and some of those areas are general fund areas, the expense for that program has gone up. So if that makes sense. When we did the budget FTE reductions, getting ready for this budget, we kept a position in public works with the intent that they would be covered $50,000 by gas tax and the other part by working more in the enterprise funds. Some of that is, there's a little less being spent there than in the general fund program at the moment. So good news, because of the allocation changes that I'll go over with you in a minute, we've gone from a projected deficit of $276,000 to an actual, basically I would call balanced budget, because obviously these are all projections, and that's great. So what you'll notice here is right below the amount that I'm showing as where we're at for the general fund, I broke out the allocations, and what I've changed the methodology. It used to be twice a year, we would go in and we would look at the expenses, and there was this massive spreadsheet that said, put a number here, take a percentage of that, go here, take a percentage of that. I broke all that down to try to understand what was happening, and I've put it to what I feel is a more understandable way of looking at how we're allocating expenses. And so what I did was for each one of those, I highlighted them in gray and listed them in the area that we're actually allocating. So like for elected officials, we're allocating $12,000 to enterprise funds. You guys, well, you oversee all the budgets, and some of your time is spent on managing what happens in the enterprise funds. So I took a percentage. So I came up with percentages, and instead of showing it as a lump sum revenue, which it's not, I'm actually showing it as an offset to the expense in that department. So that's what the gray are. So then I kind of kept with the methodology that you guys are used to of showing kind of where we're at with our fund balance. The last audited fund balance we have is from 23-24. I'm sorry, I'm delayed on getting 24-25 done. I'm working on it, but we've had staff turnover, so it's been a little bit harder to get to. I do want to point out that our expected deficit for 24-25 would have been about $712,000, but we had one-time funds, which was mostly the funds that we've closed. And so that put back in about $427,000 for an expected fund balance of almost $1.2 million. Again, that number is not audited yet, but I don't anticipate it to change significantly. And then with our change in the expected expense balanced budget, basically that won't change our fund balance much. On the page 112, I did call out some one-time expenses, and I did that because I wanted to show that if we don't get those funds, then basically we still have a balanced budget. In my past, where I'm used to is you don't spend one-time money on operating expenses. So, we have unexpected expenses and unexpected revenues that come in. And so that's what I showed here. Most significantly, I think, as Todd mentioned, we did get some recovery from legal recoveries. And that was about $47,000. And as well, I've been told to bill the fire district for half of the expenses of the staff. So I'm projecting that will be roughly around $63,000 that they will provide from January to June at this point. Whether that will continue or not, I don't have any further information on that. So that's why I put it as a one-time. So if we were to include all of those one-time monies, then we actually would have a excess revenue of $225,000 for the budget year 25-26. So what I wanted to show on the next page of your handout, again, this wasn't in the packet, sorry, this is additional information. There are packets in the back and it will be in the minutes. But this kind of just lays out for you the last few years of where we were at with how we were allocating expenses. If you notice here, we weren't allocating anything for elected. So that straight off the top is about a $12,000 increase in our general fund because we are using enterprise funds to cover those expenses. IT audit wasn't specifically called out. It was actually in the finance department. I'm going to call that out going forward because that's an expense of everybody, not just the finance department. As well, that was similar to the general fund operating expenses, which were the things that I kind of mentioned already, the copiers, the postage, the so on and so forth. I'm going to jump over SCORE for just a minute. Software, as you can see, it has increased pretty significantly over the years, and we are including allocating more things to the enterprise funds as we've identified what the uses of them are. I think things like the Parcel Quest was only going to general fund. Well, clearly they use it in other areas. So we've kind of dialed in more clearly the things that we actually can allocate. City administration, that's Todd and his group. And then the finance department, that's a significant change there just because we have directly charged the FTE to the enterprise fund instead of putting it in the finance department. And then public works. So in kind of about 2/3 of the way down, what I wanted to note was when we did the budget, we expected $363,000 of offset for allocations. When I did the October projection, I reduced that number because I thought that by taking Ken and allocating him directly to enterprise fund and taking my 0.5 of FTE, and allocating it directly, that would reduce our allocation. So that's why I bumped it down to 195. As I've gone through the year-end process, and I've taken my first look at our asset listing, I realized, one, we have probably quite a few assets on there that we no longer have. So I will be coming at some point to you with an adjusted asset listing. But when I went through that process, and I've already had gone through the SCORE process of how they determine some of our insurance expenses, I realized that I could marry those up. So for instance, in particular, the liability, property liability insurance, for whatever reason, and I don't know how, I don't know why, but basically our SCORE expenses were being allocated at 4% to the enterprise fund. That's not enough. It's very low. It went up in 2025 to 8%, and you know, that's clearly not enough either. So there, what I did was, like I said, I married up the vehicle expenses to the vehicles, the property expenses to the property assets. And when I did that, and I have that on the next page, we can allocate $230,000 worth of insurance expenses to the enterprise fund. Now, obviously, we're going to have to do a rate study at some point because these expenses historically have been done this way. And I'm changing that methodology. I did have a conversation with the auditor today just to say, I'm not crazy, right? Like I can do this. This makes sense. And I talked through it with him, and he seemed fine with it. And we talked about the methodology. So that's basically where that so-called savings, if you will, has come from. Again, it's not audited. I did run it past the auditor. I don't anticipate any specific issues with it, and if probably way more detail than you would ever want to know, but this next page is basically the breakout of how I came up with the numbers to say, yeah, 230,000 can go to enterprise fund versus in, 2023 it was 15,000. So if you have any questions from that, let me know. So I just wanted to point out that the balanced budget that we have here now does include a reduction of a finance position, the reduction of a police officer, and the reduction of a firefighter. We're balanced. We made those cuts before. We started to spend some money. And then I've been able to make this adjustment by my learning about how things are working. And so again, I just wanted to point that out, that if we look at wanting to add staff back, we got to figure out where that revenue is coming from. And then just a couple things on looking forward, because we are going to be getting to the budget setting process for the next year. Our PERS unfunded liability increase is projected to be about 10%. That's just where we're at with PERS unfunded liability. Based on the information that we have here, I would anticipate approximately an 8% insurance increase, just looking at where we've been. The software, most of our contracts are about a 7% increase in our software expenses. That's the contracts we have. We're anticipated to get a 1 to 3% COLA based on the union negotiations. And then half of our staff in the general fund, and I did include for you in the very last page, organizational chart. And when I went through this org chart, we have turned over roughly half of our staff in the general fund in this budget year. So what that means is when we hire new people every year, then we have to give them a 2.5% step increase. So what's going to happen as in prior years when we had long-term employees and we were giving COLAs, we were giving, basically whatever that COLA was. But going forward, at least for half of the staff, it's going to be COLA plus 2.5%. So just something to keep in mind as we look forward to the coming budget year. So hopefully that was helpful, and I'm open to any questions.
Yeah,
Thank you, that was awesome.
that was great. Thank you. It was
Yeah.
very thorough and
Thank you for the handout, yes.
even made it possible for me to understand. Any questions from council?
Yeah, so
Yep, go ahead.
with these allocations to enterprise funds, that's going to change their structure financially, fiscally. So you said we may have to do a rate study.
Yeah, which,
So that would be water, sewer.
and, yeah, so it would be water, sewer, and drainage, and our rates for the current rate study that we've had, and we've talked about this a few times, are basically up. We will be able to do one more rate increase this coming fiscal year, which when we budget, we'll do that. But basically, at that point, we cannot increase our rates
Without a rate study.
Without a rate study.
Yeah.
So we're kind of at a point where we really need to move that forward. Obviously, they are a lot of work, and we need to come up with the money to fund them, but they're funded through the enterprise fund. So I know that I think Ken, you were going to ask a question about the water. I think that PACE is.
Yeah, the master water plan, including the rate study, is very far along. It won't take much to finish that up. Not so with the sewer study. I really need to check into where we are as far as timeline on getting that completed.
Yeah. So, and I don't know that we've started anything. We have started the water plan, master water plan.
A couple of years ago it got started.
Yeah, water is well underway. We've got one more increase under there. Sewer, we need to make sure that we're underway with that, and Ken's going to check.
So sewer, that rate study was done in 2017 or 2018, I can't remember for sure, and we may be done with increases on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Water has at least one or two more increases.
One more, I
probably.
believe.
One more? Okay. So PACE does the rate increases, well, they have in the past, and the rate increase studies, let's put it a little more politely, they do the rate studies for us so far, unless you want to change. So something to think about there.
Please, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm not headed down the right path here, but as we have, over the past few years, moved expenses that typically weren't in the general fund over to enterprise funds, which are funded by fees instead of general taxes, we have a schedule of fee increases. You were just saying 1 or 2 more years in water and sewer. And as these expenses get moved out of the general fund and into the enterprise funds, do you have any concerns longer term that the current fee increases that we, under the previous 218 process, have scheduled, will that cover us longer term, or are we going to have to head back into a 218 process because we're just moving things from one bucket to another, and that bucket now needs to be fed more with fee increases for water and sewer?
So this is just my 2 cents, whatever. I think we should be planning to do rate studies every 5 years. That's the longest, from what I understand, that you can adopt your rates. And so we should do that. In addition to that, obviously things change, right? I don't know for the sewer how much of what is in the new plant was accounted for, but we changed plants in the middle of whatever study we're on right now, so.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So the debt related to the plant rebuild, or new plant actually, and the interceptor line was covered. This was done in public.
But
was covered.
yeah.
No, it was covered. That and these rate increases have been dramatic. I know personally, and no, they're supposed to be covered by that. No, the new rate increase with respect to the new allocation methodologies and new projects that PACE may feel need to be done due to rotting sewer pipes is why you would have a new rate study, for sure. Yeah,
Well,
so
yeah.
I think that's, I don't think that's arguable. You have to do that for sewer. Water, that was done in '22, so '27, if you're going to do a 5-year. And that plan covered, as Councilmember Clore will remember, covered the projects that have happened so far, Oak Street, the Pine Street area, the current one south of Orem, down to the one that's currently going on. It did not cover, I can't remember, did not cover the water tank on Spring Hill. I think he said we had to come back for that, right? And some other costs associated with running a water system. So, yeah, so if we want to build a water tank, which is problematic with respect to the property owner up there, that was supposed to be the final project for the 2010 Water Improvement System Plan, Master Plan. And maybe there's more to do, that a new master plan too, in both cases. So unless we all think that the pipes are all good in our city, which they're not, a new master plan regarding both, and therefore new rate studies would be appropriate. Maybe one at a time, sewer first, and then the water.
And I would just say that I wasn't here, obviously, when all that, the planning process took place, but I think a lot of operating expenses, just as we've seen even in the general fund, have changed. So, I don't know how you would account for that type of change just in your operating. That for me is more the capital things and such like that, and what they're able to put into the rates as far as that goes. But, just some of these, expenses around software and things like that, expenses that we wouldn't have known about with a new union contract. And I just think that there's probably some operating things as well, not just the fact that we might change the reallocation of administrative expenses. And this was just my proposal. If you guys, you don't want to make, at some point I need to come back with a budget adjustment if we want to go this route. And if that's not how you all want to proceed, then we won't do that. But I wanted to lay out for you how I came up with the information that I came up with, and particularly on the property liability, it's significant, and it's significant because the majority of it changed when when our insurance company came a year ago and did the review and looked at the assets and put that valuation on it. That's the significant jump there, is now they're putting a higher expense on the liability of that. So those are the things that in 5 years, a lot can happen just operationally. So I don't know if that answered your question. I'm sorry.
And Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong. I think ultimately the expenses that have been shifted into the enterprise funds the increases with insurance, everything else that was being accounted for in different ways needs to be part of this rate study because it is the cost of providing this service, which is the point of the 218 process. Period.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before we delve too much into discussion here, let's open it up to public comment for anybody who would like to comment on this budget report.
Yep.
Excellent comment. I like it.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, we got a taker.
Afa. Great job. I just wanted to throw all that aloha all over you.
Thanks.
Because that is one huge Rubik's Cube to dissect and redirect. And you did the very best you could to say that in normal English. And I followed most of it. So thank you. You did such an amazing job. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that you're in communications with the auditor, because that relationship is really a huge asset to always covering ourselves and moving forward. So I just really appreciate you. And it sounds like if, you know, I know you have to take a couple shots in there and be like, oh, it's mostly in, you know, if we can audit and put it together, we probably have good leaning towards a good budget, which is massive. Massive. I don't know if anybody on online knows how massive that is, but it's massive. So I just want to say that's amazing. Fantastic work. So I just want to say thank you to everybody doing this and cool staff. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Afa. Any other public comment? Okay. We'll bring it back now for council discussion. Over here. Enough time to chew on it, or more chewing needed? How about over here, guys? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Melissa. I would echo all those sentiments. That was great. Yeah, very thorough. Strong work. All right. Okay, moving on to the last agenda item, number 11, letter of support for AB 1708. A little background here. Assembly Bill 1708 would create a new pathway for cities with populations under 300,000 to access existing state homelessness funding. So we have a report from our city manager, Todd Uhas.
Which I don't seem to have at the moment. It's essentially what this does is it levels the playing field with smaller jurisdictions to compete with much larger. Right now, allocations seem to happen with the view that the need is greatest with cities and with larger municipal areas. And, you know, what we're finding is a lot of these larger municipal areas are meeting their RENA goals, and rural areas, smaller jurisdictions are kind of left behind. Or it takes a very long time for these smaller jurisdictions to see the funds, and by that point, an entity that wants to build affordable housing has now moved on. And so this proposed legislation levels that field.
Awesome. Any questions? Questions? Okay. Any public comment on this letter of support for this? Oh, excellent. All right. We'll bring it back for discussion. How about a motion?
All right, I'll move to show support. I'll move that the council support a letter of support for AB 1708.
All right. And all those in favor of the support?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstain? Okay, excellent. All right, moving on to number 12. Any council reports on attendance at appointed or outside meetings?
No, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow, actually.
Okay. Over here? No? Okay. Anything to add for future agenda items?
Well, the mobile home rent stabilization is on there.
Right.
So we just reconfirmed that earlier.
Yep.
And so I'm going to add that that staff look at beginning a 218 process independently for water, well, first the sewage system, sanitary sewer system, and then the water system.
Sure, okay. So that was a move to put those on separately, consecutively.
Sewer and water, are you saying devoid of pace? Because we're pretty far along with one.
This would be...
You're not talking about ditching pace and going to separate routes. We're pretty far down the road with one.
No, I have no
Okay,
problem keeping pace.
okay.
It would be up to you if you're disappointed in their performance or something. Then you would come back to council and say, let's find a new engineer, but that's, yeah. So I'll leave that in your hands there. So yes, 218 process using pace.
Yep. We need an on-call list, so we're not beholden to pace on every single item, and that, I think that will also create competition, and so pace doesn't feel they're the only game in town. So what I'd like to do is, assemble, it's going to take some time, to assemble a approved contractors list for specific types of work that we can call from if we're not liking, for instance, the bid we get from Pace.
Sounds good. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Moving on to item 14.
Here, did she get a copy of this? You did? John, why don't you take